Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 16th of November, comes to you from London. And I wanted to start by just looking at European gas markets. A lot of our clients trade energy, and there's been some comments on LinkedIn about the fact that the charts can't take account of what's going on with Russia, with Putin, release of gas supplies from Russia, weather, all of these factors in the news. And the reality is that the chart reflects everything that everybody knows about the market. And so the argument is that if it's not in the chart, i.e. people are not trading it, then it's really not worth knowing. So what I always say to people is, tell me something I don't know. If you've got a bit of information, a bit of news in the marketplace that no one else has got, it won't be in the chart. That's great. But if it's in the common domain, if people know about it in the public domain, then the reality is it will show up in the chart. So let's just look at the reality of what's going on. This is Dutch gas TTF front month, the main contract. And I put on here this morning just the on-balance volume, because this is quite interesting, of course. The fact that we've seen this big sell-off, but not really a big corresponding sell-off in volume. So that is a factor and something that we just do take into account. The fact is we've had this big catastrophic failure from the spike high that we saw in October, and that failure will hang over us for a long time. And again, this comes back to the time horizon, and this is one of the beauties of charts. We look at daily charts, weekly charts or 60-minute charts, we then get these different views. And when we call the market every day for our clients, we look at 1-minute charts in order to be able to make projections on the day. So time horizon is one of the key aspects of charting, and that's one of the things that you have with technicals that you just don't get with fundamentals. How can you distill the information for what it means for today, what it means for the week, what it means for the month, what it means for the year? That's the beauty of looking at different time frame charts. So this is the daily chart, and here we see where the price is coming through on the cloud. That's not great news. And the fact that we are just wandering sideways, and we've taken a long time to recover. So we're not calling gas prices going higher than this spike. At the moment, we're not calling that because there's really no signs of that. We've got some relief rally targets. We've got a target here to 90 at the moment, which is looking quite good. But the reality is there's nothing that's telling us at the moment, because we don't have a big spike high run in the price to give us a new target higher. So just because I say I'm bullish for recovery doesn't mean that I'm saying it's going higher, and that's really important to recognize. But the fact remains, on the 60-minute chart we have broken higher, and if we look at just the key levels, it's key that we've just broken that range, and that happened yesterday. And for the last few days we have been calling gas higher. We've put out a call this morning, not what most people would think we've done, but we have put out a call and explained why we've done that call. And the most important thing for us is that we don't call it the wrong way. So there's no point in us saying that gas is going to go higher if it goes lower. We'd rather be neutral. So we put our call out today, and that's gone out to clients. But the fact remains that we did put in we had a low here. This is Dow theory. This goes back to the beginnings of 100 years ago, Charles Dow, over 100 years ago. And the fact is that we made a higher low. So that's really significant that people were prepared to pay more for gas, TTF, here than they were a month earlier. And we are in the same contract, of course. And then what's happened yesterday is we've broken that high. So we've got a high, and we've got progressively higher lows and higher highs. That's the signs of recovery that's going on within this pattern. Not necessarily a new high, just that we are going higher on this shorter term time frame, and that's what's been driving our calls for bullish the last few days. There's a little double bottom going on here. That's looking quite positive. How far can this run where we've got targets, and there will be new targets coming in all the time, which is why we say to people, keep an eye on the targets. And if we look at today, what's going on, this is the 1-minute chart. You'll see we've got a downside target, and that's just tempered our view a little bit. And if we just play around with these box sizes, you'll see we've got a couple more downside targets. And this is why you have to do the analysis yourself. We give you the clues in the morning, you need to then follow it through for the day. And here we see that we do just have a little downside target again, a little upside target. It's looking pretty bullish, but today might just be a pause day, and that's one thing we'll keep monitoring for clients throughout the day. So I just wanted to start with that, just because of all the news flow, and charts can't predict what Putin's going to do, and we can't predict what the weather's going to do. Sure, nothing can. But the reality is the charts are telling us how people are positioned in the market, and that's how we derive what's going to happen for the day. So I'm not really happy to say that it's ridiculously stupid that the charts are not useful when these things are going on. So let's have a look at Brent Crude. We see here we're going higher, and that's quite key. We are jumping this morning, but we were neutral again because of a shortage of targets. US nat gas is actually looking stronger. We've crossed the cloud. We have a couple of unexciting upside targets, but we do have this medium term one on the 60-minute chart. So this is short term. This is for today. Medium term, or this is very short term for today. Remembering this time frames here, so very short term. If you want to know what's going on in hours, you look at minutes. If you want to know what's going on in days, you look at hours. And if you want to know what's going on in weeks, you look at days. And that time horizon is an absolutely critical part of the analysis. And so we do see here, if we play with these targets, we have got a few upside targets, but nothing terribly exciting. But the fact is that we are crossing the cloud there. Coal sitting at 103, really hasn't moved, starting to wander outside the cloud. Coal was actually the first instrument to break down through the 60-minute cloud in energy, and it looks like it will be the first to break the daily cloud as well. Hasn't done it yet, but not looking great for coal, and we have got downside targets hanging over us. Not so for emissions. Yesterday we said emissions would go higher and make a new all-time high. That's exactly what happened yesterday, and we've broken to a new all-time high, but we are just short of targets for today. We do have some quite compelling targets, and we will put out an emissions targets report for our clients today, talking about what the long-term targets are for emissions. But for the moment, we're just lacking a few short-term targets, and we see them building on the chart, but we've got targets in either direction. You've got to play with those box sizes. And remember, you've got to use percentage targets for the longer-term charts, because the log scale targets will be more accurate when you've had big moves in price. For the short term, I just use arithmetic. If you want to understand that, you need to do my training course, basically. Here we see the same on UK. We've got strong moves here, but just a lack of targets for today. Gas prices jumped yesterday, and of course we just talked about TTF. This is MBP. Again, we're just short of a lack of upside targets. OTC prices might give you that, so keep an eye out for new targets developing through the day. We're more positive on power, and we're seeing here some pretty good targets now for power prices, so that's looking good. And the one that we felt very strongly about was Nordic Power, the quarterly contract, just a bit more liquid than the cow, and that's looking really good for a push to a new high, unlike a lot of the other charts that we've seen. And interestingly there, again, play with the box sizes. We've got these two quite compelling targets, quite a long way higher, and we've broken that previous high. All this information in the chart matters. Now, just a quick look at the macro. Normally I start with the macro, but I've done energy first today. We see the dollar index pushing higher, and so that's looking bullish on all three time frames. We're saying that 2022 is going to be the year of the dollar. This is a long-term recovery, and that's very bearish, of course, for lots of other currencies like the euro. We've got some pretty big downside targets. Something bad looks like it might happen when you look at the size of the scale of these targets. So euro weaker, dollar strength. And if we look at the dollar yen chart, we're sitting at 114. The yen is normally a lead indicator. Watch for a break here. If we see that in the dollar yen, it will happen in other charts. Sterling sitting at 134, is really starting to wave goodbye to the mid 130s, so that's quite significant as well. And if we look at euro sterling, 118.38, looking stronger, pushing for that 119 level again, really strong these last few days. Unemployment numbers out this morning, quite positive for the UK. And we're looking here, we're seeing that move there. It fears that the UK economy might start to overheat and inflation coming back and interest rates might go up. It's all in the charts. That's really what we're looking for. Taking a look at Bitcoin, that has pulled back. We do have targets to 70 and 72. 83,000 is the long-term target, but we do have these new mini targets back into the high 50s. So that's what's going on at the moment. Keep an eye on, and if you're trading Bitcoin, keep an eye on your 1 minute charts. I trade Ethereum, so the 1 minute targets are vital there. The S&P 500 index fell yesterday, but it's actually just, it was up 0.25% yesterday, so it is just sideways for the moment on that short-term chart. We do have targets all pointing to 6-7% higher, and that's really what the market's aiming for. The futures are down slightly this morning. The S&P future down 0.13. The VIX volatility rising to 17. So just ticking up a little bit, having formed a bottom over the last couple of months, but it is still bearish on all three time frames really. And if we look at the FTSE future this morning, little change there. The DAX in Germany up very slightly, still just holding on to its gains, and we've got medium long-term targets that are still quite a bit higher for the DAX. The CAC Kront up 20.28%, so that's looking good. Tokyo, little changed. The Hang Seng had a good performance, up 1.3% overnight, back into bullish territory on the short term. Hasn't had a very good few months, of course, but we are just seeing a little potential head and shoulders inverted here building. That's the beauty of the lagging line. It sometimes just shows up a little bit more clearly than it does in the candles. And if we see here, we've got the Sensex in India down 0.25%, but still has that very long-term target. And this pullback will lock this column, giving us a new upside target. So that will be quite key as well. The Aussie market was down 0.2%. And we just take a quick look at the charts there. We see that we got a little bit more volatility going on, and it has really just struggled the last few months, not looking as clear as the US. Very resource laden, of course, the Aussie index. Looking at wheat, we had a very strong week last week. We're holding those gains, got good upside targets. That's going to fuel inflationary fears. But you see all sorts of stories about wheat being stuck in Ukraine and energy prices driving up wheat prices. It's all in the charts. That's really what we're saying here. Break to a new high with targets. It reflects everything that everyone knows about the market for wheat. And so we've been saying wheat looks very strong now in those long-term targets, having broken to a new high. Gold looking pretty good at 1872, holding the gains that we saw last week. There's the weekly candle, holding that bullish trend, finding support on the cloud, really moving back into bullish territory on all three time frames. So gold looking strong. The 1866 target was given. That was given back at the beginning of November. That's been met. We've now looked at these medium-term targets, and we see here a little bit of congestion going on the short term. That's reflected there, so keep an eye on that. Silver sitting at up 0.5% this morning, also looking good, just breaking now into the cloud as well. And if we look at interest rates in the US, 1.61% for the 10-year yield, starting to creep higher again. Those targets into the high 170s still sitting there. A new target of 180 on the short-term chart. If we break higher, we activate that. So that's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.